Guten Morgen.
Good morning. For me, this is a very important event. During the past days, I had continuous talks with the PEN in Berlin. Thank you that you have initiated this together with us. This event was planned to have another working title, but the world is turning around rapidly. The world changes in a very rapid speed. It has become an aggressive place, so we have to react quickly. And I think this is the right place to do so. Thank you, Eva Menasse, for starting the initiative with the PEN. I would like to thank the speakers, one of which had to cancel because she fell ill. But I would like to thank Thomas Dothan-Dreyfus, Esther Shapira, and all the other participants. I hope we will have a good and peaceful discussions. Thanks also go to Doran Rabinovic and Myron Mendel. Okay, so you take your seats wherever you want. However, this is the host's seat. This is my seat, the host is saying. Well, our concerns go out to Israel. This is our today's topic, our panel. This terror of the anti-Semitic pogrom of the 7th of October goes beyond our imagination. Even the ones who saw the video recordings, who heard the statements of the concerned people, who read the pathologist's report, are so concerned. Everyone actually knows someone who was tortured, injured, or kidnapped. All of the people here have Israeli citizenship, so how can they not be concerned? And if you take this in comparison to the German population, it's as if 13,000 people would have been killed a day. It's unimaginable. And the scale of the atrocities goes beyond everything that can be put into words. Everyone tries to cope with it, to find words for what cannot be spoken out. The suffering continues, the suffering of the victims, the suffering in Israel and in the Gaza Strip. The exact details that go on during this war, we cannot talk about these. We don't know about these. How can we, as outsiders, as civilians, far away from the happenings, can validate, can talk about this? Also now the current rocket attacks on the hospital in Gaza, we cannot verify this. The Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, have published videos of the broadcasting traffic between the soldiers. Maybe it was a rocket that missed its target it was sent from the jihad, but we cannot validate this. We cannot evaluate the truthness of everything. Please let me make a personal comment here. I was very hesitating about taking on this job as a host because I don't know if I can find the answers for what my guests are talking about or the questions they ask. Let's try it. Let's try not to fight. Let's try to be quiet and focused, and let us talk about what has changed since that day at the beginning of October, since the beginning of the attacks. What hopes have come up? What hopes have been cancelled? Everywhere in the world, Jews are afraid. Is it possible to protect them in the case of a serious attack? And all people feel connected. Their hearts go out to the people, to the victims of the attacks, because they were killed because they were Jews and not because they were just war victims. So many people in an unprecedented number. And for this, I would like to ask you to be silent with me and commemorate the victims of the 7th of October, starting from that date. Thank you. We are on an informal first name basis. All of us, Meron Mendel, I've known for the longest. Doran Rabinovich, we have just got to know each other. Tomer Dotan Dreyfus, all three of them are known to you. They have published a lot, they wrote a lot and reflected about the question we are dealing with today. Meron Mendel is director of the educational place Anne Frank, and he's also professor in the US. Meron, you grew up in a kibbutz in Israel. How do you feel today? Well, I feel considerably bad, of course. During the past days, I felt like jumping between serious talks, the ones that we conduct today here, and then I go back to my private room and I watch funerals on Zoom, funerals that took place yesterday, that take place today, funerals of people I have known since my childhood, since my youth, children of friends. I see their funerals. Yesterday I talked with the father of a very good friend of mine, and he said, my mother was saved from the pogrom, from the Holocaust. She saw her parents being killed, and now I have to bury my daughter. And her son saw how they killed the father, how he was massacred. So many different emotions I'm going through at the moment, and I try to look at them in an abstract way. I try to think in a political way about these things. We heard Zizek's speech, and we have to put it all into context. Maybe that's true, but it is so hard for me, because the faces, I see them every night, every day in front of me. I remember them. Everything I think of, let's say, I think of a basketball game that I played back then with the young people that are not alive anymore. I really have problems putting all of this into a context, and I cannot find words for it. I cannot explain it. I feel shattered. I feel speechless. I feel that here, I quoted the feeling in the Jewish society and in the synagogue. I heard you went there for the prayers, and it was important to you, and it was the feeling like that you were attacked yourself, or the people said that. Do you feel the same? Do you feel you were attacked as a Jew, as a person, as an Israeli? Well, on the one hand, I understand people in Germany saying, I feel not safe anymore. I feel insecure. This is a feeling you cannot contradict. But I have to tell you, I feel very safe in Germany. As safe to an extent that it is almost embarrassing to me as compared to Israelis, because they live in fear. Maybe this is a stupid reaction of myself, but I absolutely refuse to discuss at this level putting myself into this position of a threatened Jew. I'm not there. I'm not such a person. This is actually not fair. If you look at the people in Israel who are really in danger, who woke up, they sat at the breakfast table, and then out of a sudden they were just slaughtered. So I cannot tell you that I'm afraid. It's not true. I didn't mean to say that you feel scared or feel threatened. It's more like you are meant as a person with the attacks, that they relate to you as a person. I don't know. I cannot put myself into the shoes of Islamist terror supporters, people who, someone who wakes up one day, crosses the border in order to kill and slaughter other people, rape women, decapitate children. I don't know what this person means to be in life, and I'm not interested in this. I'm just a human being. Every human on this planet who has just a little bit of decency and a moral compass should feel addressed by these attacks. It is the time to speak it out. The first victims of the Hamas weren't the Jews, but people from the Fatah who from the high-rise buildings in Gaza were just dropped down from the 20th floor. It were homosexual people who were killed and tortured. I think, we have known this for a while. Look at the Islamistic State, IS organization. Every human being who is not like them is the target of these attacks. Thomas Dothan Dreyfus, writer and translator. Your novel Birobidjan was just published, and it is about a Jewish settlement, a diaspora actually. All of this seems to be so distant out of a sudden. You were born in Haifa and have been living in Berlin for 10 years. The 7th October is a turning point. Israel will never be the same again. This is what I have heard a lot during the past days. Do you feel the same? Yes, and I think this is connected to my question to your question to Meron about our safety here. I have to tell you, I'm very emotional at the moment, but let me try to find some explanation, some theory here. I think that Israel's safety, even maybe it was sort of fake, imagined, we saw other attacks on Israel before, that this conception of Israel as a safe haven is exactly what allowed us not to live in Israel, but to go to Berlin, Paris, or London. It is this idea that in case the worst is going to happen in Germany, France, or the UK, if the worst case happens, we can simply pack our stuff and go back to Israel. But I cannot say that anymore. I myself, I'm not going to say we, I try to avoid this. But why can you not say this anymore? Because it's from a military point of view, it's not safe anymore. Is it an emotional safe haven that is gone? It's because I have understood, and well, I knew it before, but it was comfortable to ignore it. However, you cannot ignore it anymore. That, and I'm not condemning anything here. It's not a political statement. It's just my point of view that Israel is not a safe place for Jews anymore. And this is why if we see anti-Semitism here in Germany, the solution is to tackle it here in Germany and not go elsewhere in order to tackle the problem or to flee from it. And this change in conception that I see at the moment, and maybe also many other peoples can see at the moment, maybe people are not aware of it, but this is something that creates a lot of fear in me. It's that it's not coming from Islamists or Hamas activists in Germany. Even if there are neo-Nazis in Germany running up in front of my home, in Germany, I have to tell you, Israel is not a second option for me anymore. And this is where this very existential fear comes from at the moment.
Anti-Semitism, well, you're only safe on the moon when it comes to anti-Semitism. And Hannah Arendt once said, when Jews are attacked, you have to defend yourself as a Jew. And has this phrase approached, is this what you are aiming at? Well, I am looking into such questions for the first time in this very depth. And even as somebody who was raised in Israel, the difference between somebody who lives in a society with a Jewish majority and in a society where Jews are not a majority, well, I have understood the difference now. And I cannot give you a good answer to this question. Well, let me rephrase it. You're sitting here now in Berlin, in Germany, and I guess all the time you watch the news, Israeli news, TV, and so on. Has this country come closer? Has the distance between you and this country been reduced? Yes, definitely. And this is not necessarily a positive thing. It's a kind of survivor's guilt, I feel. My family is still there, and I decided 13 years ago to leave, and they are in this situation, and I find myself in a very different situation. So yes, I feel a little bit of survivor's guilt. Doron, you are nodding. Doron Rabinovich, you were born in Tel Aviv. You live in Vienna, author, historian, and everything I have said so far, introducing the guests that they lost somebody, know somebody who lost somebody, and I guess you as well are a news junkie, so to say, and you keep watching the news 24 hours a day. And you wrote, this is the moment where, away from Sunday speeches, we have to face up to this situation. Fight against anti-Semitism cannot succeed without fighting for the right of Israel as a civilian society. What do you mean? Well, first of all, I have to say, fortunately, in my immediate surroundings, nobody has been killed. I mean, I know some people, but, well, the main thing is, yes, everything we heard, I can only agree to this. What you just quoted, I wrote this, and I still support this, but I have to say I wrote this more or less directly and immediately while the killing took place. I started writing it, I think, Saturday, and I'm not sure, but maybe afterwards also a little bit during the night. And we already saw demonstrations in Vienna, and killing was going on. People were being kidnapped. And at Maria-Hilfer-Straße in Vienna, people were dancing in order to celebrate the killing of Jews. And, you have to mention this. This is a fact. Hannah Arendt meant what she said in the following way. There is the Nathan der Weise by Lessing, this famous play. And Nathan is addressed as a Jew, but he answers as a human being. And the German audience liked this and still likes it very much. Hannah Arendt came to Germany in order to receive an award. And she said, not long after Shoah, if you are attacked as a Jew, you have to defend yourself as a Jew. This is nothing against universalism. Hannah Arendt was a universalist. But she means something which is extremely important. And I think all of us have mentioned it. I think that it is aimed at us, but not only at us. So you have to think it in two different dimensions. Hamas clearly states, yes, they are referring to all of the Jews. This is part of their kind of statutes, and they already proved it in the past. However, we also know that this is also against other Israelis who are not Jewish who were killed. And I also feel this kind of survivor's guilt towards these people. And, many of them show a lot of solidarity. So, as Moron said, maybe it's a little obscene when I think of my family in Israel to say that we are threatened. You cannot really compare their situation to ours. However, I have to understand that apparently there was an attack in Berlin against I don't know what kind of group. And this is not the first time. Well, when we think of the war in former Yugoslavia, for example, this was horrible. At the central bus station in Vienna, we saw people who worked in one factory together during the week, and during the weekend they went to former Yugoslavia to kill each other. But I think Yugoslavian exiled people were not attacked. Where I live in this neighborhood of Berlin, people were giving away sweets in order to celebrate the attack against the Jews. However, I think it is not the right time to cause panic and a certain mood, because we exactly want that this mood is not developed. Still, it's interesting, Eva Illus, who is not here, but she's one of the signatories of a declaration by Israeli intellectuals and authors. And this declaration is a reaction to the reaction of so many other intellectuals all over the world. And it expresses the horror in view of lack of solidarity. And let me quote.
Arguing that Israeli society brought this tragedy upon itself, yet others have shielded themselves from the moral shock through historical comparisons and rationalization. And there are even those, no small number, for whom the darkest day in our society's history was a cause for celebration. Und es heißt weiter, this area of responses surprised us. We never imagined that individuals on the left, advocates of equality, freedom, justice, and welfare, would reveal such extreme moral insensitivity and political recklessness. Doran, hat es dich auch überrascht, dass es diese Reaktion auch unter...
Were you surprised that intellectuals reacted this way? Well, the interesting thing is, and let me refer back to what Thomas said, what does surprise mean? It's quite an interesting thing. My first essay I wrote as a young person was against nuclear power. And I said, well, there may be this enormous accident, the worst ever accident, but I never believed this would happen. And when I saw it happening, I was surprised. In recent years, I've been surprised quite a lot, You tell something will happen and all of a sudden it happens and you are flabbergasted. And truly surprised. Am I surprised when Zizek said yesterday, I watched it, and nobody talked about Palestinians, but yes, Palestinians were mentioned. Or he said, that the massacre against Reinhard Heydrich happened, and then apparently he put it in a way that Reinhard Heydrich was giving a nation to the Jews. Well, I thought it was strange, but surprised? I think the declaration is a good thing. I think the declaration by Eva Illouz was a good thing. Moseras and those people, they are quite close to me, but I have to admit I didn't sign it. And as Thomas said, there comes a time when maybe it's smarter not to be too smart. Well, let me ask again. You said you are not surprised. Why didn't it surprise you? Because you should think that apart from all political debate, but we know that in recent years, well, I do not want to apply the broad brush here. Very often right-wingers say it's the leftists. I'm convinced, anti-Semitism or the others. You see anti-Semitism on the other part, but parts of leftists, and we know this, part of the leftists have a strange reflex when it comes to Jewish life. And here it's also about Jewish life. It's about, well, trying to attack people who are Jews. This is a fact. And, well, as I said, you shouldn't apply the broad brush, but I think it's a topic and I think it's good to discuss it. Thomas, in Berlin, you are very close to the leftists that were just mentioned. I'm sure you know a lot of people with whom, up until October 7th, or this is a question rather, I think that there are a lot of people with whom you were closer up until October 7th rather than afterwards. Or am I wrong? No. Over the last 11 days, I think I blocked 40 people on social media who were closer to me before. I think the Israeli leftists have become a very lonely group since this attack, since this massacre. As Doron said, there is this reflex. And we have friends among European leftist movements, and we watched them celebrating this. And you know, my family could have been killed as well. So I was shocked. On the other hand, there is this reflex that you both mentioned. Triggering panic is also a reflex coming from the opposite side. As somebody living in Berlin, I can only state that Sonnenallee in the quarter of Neukölln looks like the West Bank, with a lot of police presence and searches and so on. And, well, for example, some people try to hunt foreigners. And this fills me with concern about this country. No doubt, you have to protect Jewish life in Germany. The question is, why, not why, not why, but how. And I think this is also the question in Israel, at least to me, it's this question. No doubt, you have to destroy Hamas. It's a brutal terror organization, and we have to get rid of them. The question is how.
Gleich noch, aber das
And in this point of view, it is not a question that we have to destroy Hamas. In this point of view, do you agree with the majority of your friends who are maybe not all Jews? Well, I wouldn't say that I don't have Hamas supporters around myself. Of course not. I mean, but there is a big confusion, and I would like to address something that Meron has said. It's the lack of words. It was mentioned before what Zizek said last night. He said many things that you can criticize profoundly, but if you boil down to the facts, he said that, and he is actually a non-Israeli and non-Jewish thinker. It is a pity, he said, it is not possible to analyze this position. He did not say justification or anything. He said analyze it, analyze these points, because we are too close at the events. We are still seeing the faces in front of us. And I have to admit, at the moment, I'm not in a position to do that. But I wish that some time in the future I will be able to do that, so that I will be better able to understand the conflict. And, okay, I said I will avoid it, but I want to be in a position to better understand the conflict and to find solutions, because the solutions we have at hand now seem not to work, and they have not worked for decades. And in order to have a change of course, to have something that will work for the safety of Israeli people and all people in the region, we have to be able to analyze the situation. I have to admit it. Meron, you want to comment? Of course, but just one follow-up question here, or maybe you just go ahead. Well, of course, analyzing it, Tomer, I totally agree. We need time and a distance in order to analyze what happened. But at the moment, what I miss, and also with my leftist friends, I feel alone in these circles, actually. What I miss is the recognition of this absolute evil without ifs and buts. I grew up with Sabra and Shatila. As a child, the absolute evil was named by my parents. It is the two refugee camps, Sabon and Shatila, who in 1982 were built, and people were massacred by the Israelis back then. And I didn't even need a context. I didn't need to understand what what was going on, but it was the absolute evil. So if we also say Bucha, for example, everyone knows what is going on and no need of context. Beri, Far Aza, near us, can you understand what it means as symbols of the absolute inhumanity? In Beri, 20% of the population were massacred, slaughtered. Many others in this minute, in this hour, live in Gaza with absolute uncertainty, and they don't know if they will go on living. Their parents have already been killed. And all these talks with leftish people, I'd say, they don't have this basic knowledge. The word Beirei is just a word. And you cannot talk about this without ifs and buts and without Zizek telling me we need the context. And if we have this common foundation at last, if we have it, then you can talk about everything. All political contexts, events, you talk about political question, whether Netanyahu has promoted Hamas, supported Hamas. All political international developments and what Israel has done wrong on a continuous basis. But I need to have this common understanding, this consensus that all of us here are talking along the same line, Beris, Akasa, Neros. These are happenings that must not be debated. Doron wanted to comment. I wanted to underline it. Also, before Meron has said this, we are here, the three of us, and people as such who absolutely agree on this point. And there is a background, that the contextualization also refers to the word context, which means how do I talk about it when I put it into a contextualization. And without a doubt, Hamas did not intend to achieve an end of the occupation or to find a compromise. It was actually the reason why during the 90s they carried out these attacks. We must not be surprised, actually, but we are surprised. Because this is what we cannot understand, and it is necessary to address it. After Charlie Hebdo, for example, the civil society across Europe reacted, and it was not discussed. It was unnecessary to discuss whether the magazine acted in the right way or reacted, but the discussion was there, but it didn't mean that we had to continue the debate. Of course we have to. And even if you are clear about the fact that we have to do something against Hamas, I don't know if we can destroy it, but we have to do something against them. We have to admit that it is not possible not to know how. Of course, it is a dilemma. It is. When I mentioned Nathan der Weise, that play, now I would like to refer to Shylock. At the play Merchant of Venice, we hear that the Jew has to have his right. He has to cut out a pound of meat out of Antonio, but without shedding just one single drop of blood. So we are faced with a situation where we have to say we are against war atrocities, war crimes. We have a different set of standards. But one thing is very clear. I'm very glad that I can be here in Europe, that I can be an author in Vienna, and not someone who has to deal with these questions the generals, the military has to deal with. I'm very glad. And I'm saying this. Actually, I know what I am and why, and not the other thing. Well, you said about you talked about the consensus. Maybe it's not about destroying the Hamas, but weakening its military structures, destroying them so that they cannot continue to act like this. And also the right of self-defense was mentioned. I have to say, no one was able to explain to me what it means. In reality, there must not be casualties. Everyone knows this is not possible. This is a fantasy. This is just a theoretical construction. And this is what you meant when you were referring to The Merchant of Venice and Shakespeare. Yes, but at the same time, we agree that even if there is a military attack on the Hamas, it is meaningless if we miss the policy making here. There is the suffering of the Palestine people, and there is the rule of law, and we also agree in that. Well, let's take a look also at this at the end. If I talk about this turning point that has happened, have we really understood it? Sadra Shatila is in the conscience of everyone who is dealing with the Palestine perspective, the massacre in a Palestine village. In a Palestinian village, the question actually has been answered. I don't think that Beirei or queer answer will ever have that same significance. But why is that? We just notice it is like that. But with your help, I would like to understand, why is it like this? Why is it that it is not the same natural matter of fact, that we don't have empathy here, that we do not condemn this in the same way as we do condemn the pogrom? Well, there are several reasons why there is not a consensus in this in general. But I think even if we have, as we have said it before, we continue speaking about it. We also talk about other topics, for example, whether the war in Gaza will be helpful to anyone or not. Doron mentioned the suffering of the Palestine people. And even if we have said it before that Hamas's attack can be seen as the absolute evil, we will hear time and again, but what about Be'eri? I keep hearing this during the past days. Every sentence has to start with it, that I have to condemn the Hamas attack as evil, or else they don't let me talk. They don't let me continue to talk. Also, after 5 minutes, I have to repeat it. And the question is, of course, we have that problem with people who don't consider this as evil, but as a liberation or whatever. But is there not the problem existent in the listeners? Even if it is repeated time and again, they don't hear it, they need it, they go on needing this reaffirmation. This is something we have to bear in mind when we talk about this consensus we are striving for. Here, in this panel, we have that consensus. And still, I have to keep repeating it. Well, you have to repeat it because we do this as a talk for an audience who maybe cannot really sort the things in their heads. And also what Miran said was that there is the desire to hear a unanimous condemnation of the happenings. And it also got something to do with the lack of empathy that comes up time and again, not on your part, of course, but it has to be mentioned always. It is similar to the situation during the 9/11 events, when you were not able to talk about the attacks or talking about the background and the context without taking a position here, taking a stand. And also this position in the front of your Muslim discussion partners what their position is.
Haben wir
But the question is also a question to Meron and to you. From a leftist point of view, or you from a leftist point of view, was there a kind of illusion on our part in terms of discussing with Palestinians, also in terms of the Hamas and the situation in Gaza? There has always been a lot of hope if politics were to change. So I look towards Gaza. I will not talk about the West Bank and the PLO, but I will only focus on Gaza. Then we could find peace. October 7th and the massacre, are these the clear signal that there has never been this opportunity? This was an illusion? Well, first of all, briefly on why this desire of condemning this, as there is no consensus about this. And what we keep hearing is, what do you expect if you colonialize the country? This is a fight for decolonization. And we see a development of an alliance between post-colonial leftist movements and those who live in Israel. We don't talk about occupied territories, West Bank or Gaza. We talk about Israel as a whole. They are all regarded as settlers, and their blood is worth nothing any longer. And not only Hamas says freeing Palestine means freeing all the territories, including Tel Aviv, Haifa, Jaffa, and so on. And I agree with you, Thomas, when you say we should not always be suspicious about everybody when it comes to the interests of the state of Israel. I think this is quite absurd when we look at the discourse, but at a lower level, I mean, I don't accept this, but still I have the desire that people say, yes, we recognize that you have a right of existence. I have Muslim friends as well. When I tell them I come from Israel and they say Palestine and I say Israel and they say Palestine, then I say, I will stop talking to you if you do not say Israel. Maybe this is a little childish on my part, but I want people to recognize that I exist, that I have an identity, that I have the right to live, and my family has a right to live. Thus far, this issue. Okay, maybe I can interrupt here because watching the time, I would like to ask Doron a last question. What confuses me is why does nobody ask what kind of indications do we have that Palestine has democratic rights and, free Palestine people who organize demonstrations like this? I mean, nobody wants them to be a government in Palestine, and, well, it would be horror to think what kind of regime they would set up. But my final question to you is, October 7th, did you lose any illusions that day? What happened there? And maybe we have not made this crystal clear. For Jews, this was a kind of insult. And, the situation there has been a precarious one for decades, whether you say 1948 Toulon or Kishinev 1903 or Hebron 1929 or 1941 Baghdad or 1946 Kielce. It's a precarious matter. And we did not choose to go to Palestine because oranges are sweeter there compared to Italy. No, it was no longer possible to live here. So the project was also related to the fact that people wanted to kill Jews. As Thomas said, we were living in the diaspora, being aware of the fact never again. Israel does not have safety as an illusion, but it gave us a self-consciousness. After 1949, the self-consciousness, you can be proud outside of your house as a Jew. And this self-consciousness has been damaged now. This is what Jews are confronted with. This is why they want to hear Israel and Jews have a right to exist, because this right to exist has been doubted for centuries. This is the very reason for this desire. And this reason, this is what Hamas aimed at. Didn't I know before? Who didn't know before? I did not want to tackle the question yet because I think we've not come there yet. But when you ask me, some people thought you do not have to negotiate with PLO because you can maintain a status quo with Hamas and Saudi Arabia. We never waged war against them. We can have peace with them. As a leftist, I had an illusion. No, not me. Maybe others, not me. And I say it, although maybe this is not the right place to say so. But when you ask me, the Jewish leftists didn't do anything wrong. In this situation, with this massacre, you know, they paid the highest price. The people killed there came from the leftists in the Jewish world. It were our people. This is what you can state. And others will shed blood as well. But many of the people in the government are not part of this group. Let's put it this way. Our time for the discussion is over, but the discussion needs to continue also among ourselves, also with others. But I think we were able to have a first discussion to shed light, a first light on this topic. And I have two wishes. First of all, reflect upon what we heard. Please make sure that it is possible to say Israel just like that, without doubting in any way that this country, this people has a right to exist. I don't know any comparable country which has been attacked in a similar way and has to defend itself. So please consider this, even though we will be confronted with so many images, with so much information. Secondly, stay here because we will have another important talk now. The topic is Russia, Hope for Russia. The Russia that hopefully we will see one day after Putin. Claudia Roth will attend the panel and one of the co-founders of Memorial. Thank you.